My name is Davis Wardwell. I'm 18
My
years
name's
old.
Lisa
My name is
Hannon.
Noah Blunt. I'm the student pastor here
Trio
at Northside.
Quinn. I'm actually Charlie's cousin.
David Thomas, here with Charlie.
Austin Gregory. Thank you for having
My
me.
name is Donovan
My name is
Jones.
Micah Aver. I'm a student at Lounge High
All
School.
right. Well, Mr. Charlie, you're going to lead us out here tonight on your Young Minds podcast.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, and I'm so glad to have our next guest on with us. If you should introduce yourself, and let's keep on rolling.
Yeah, all right. My name is Brett Thomas. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And so, before we even get in your testimony and everything, so you've been on a podcast before, right?
I have been on a podcast before. I have a little bit of podcasting experience.
Yeah. And, probably not as question driven. It was probably a bit more just whatever. Like, I'm not saying you talk about whatever, but some podcasts, they're off the cuff all the time.
Right.
And this one, maybe too. Who knows? Because you might go down some rabbit holes with all the questions, because that happens a lot.
I do chase rabbit holes every now and then.
That's good. That's good. All right. So what is your testimony?
So let's see. I came to know the Lord later in life.
Mm-hmm.
I did grow up in church. My parents, we went to church when I was a child, a Methodist church here in town. I'm from Valdosta. But we stopped going probably when I was in my early teens, and I was baptized as a child, but I'll be the first to tell you that I don't really think it meant anything because I didn't know what I was doing. I saw my brother get baptized, and I was like, ooh, me too. I'm excited about it. But I never knew Jesus, and I was never saved. And so, just went through my life thinking I could do it on my own. Got into my adulthood when I was in my early 20s and stuff. Thought I was a great person. To me, it was all about morality. How I thought I lived a good moral life. I thought I was a great person. And then come to find out I wasn't a great person. And, my greatest message, my testimonies outside of Christ, we're capable of a lot of evil is what we're capable of. But I did not get saved. I believe I was 31 when I got saved. So I was later in life. I came to the Lord. I went to a discipleship program with a good friend of mine, Nathan. He discipled me. I was at a pretty dark time in my life. I won't go into any detail, but it turned my life around.
Yeah.
It turned my life around. And I'd say that Jesus saved my life, saved my marriage, put me on a path to where I was just happier, now came to the point in career-wise where I'm much happier and free. And so I'd say that kind of sums it up as a whole there.
And so how old are you now?
I'll be 30,
I'm not trying
37.
to expose you, but just trying to get some background.
I'll be 37 this year.
Okay.
So
well, you look younger than 37. I'll say that.
I appreciate that.
But to say that you got, saved at consider I guess older age than what most people do.
Yes.
That's encouraging because most people, they're kind of set in their ways by then.
Correct.
And they don't want to admit that there's something missing, or they could, go towards Jesus. They're like, no, if I hadn't done it when I was a teenager or younger, I'm not going to do it now. That's a lot of people, I think, they feel that way. But you can. There's nothing in the Bible that says you can't.
You always can. And I tell you what, I had a lot of pride when I was younger. And I talk about this in my life group a lot. We talk about how pride is one of those things that just keeps you from the Lord. And I had a lot of pride, but, to your point, I think being saved later in life, and this is not to say other people's testimonies don't carry weight, but I feel like sometimes when I do confront older people who don't know the Lord, I feel like I can relate to them, and it's like, hey, I was living my life in sin, fully enveloped in sin. And, it's so much better on the other side.
100%.
So,
for me too, with being, because I was, I say older, I wasn't a kid. I was
right.
What was I? Well, I was still, I was an older teenager, 17, I think.
Okay.
17, 16, when I got saved and baptized. And, but the coolest thing for me is I can remember it. Because I hear a lot of stories I don't really remember it that much. For me, I've got there's video of it. There's, video evidence of it. And that's just one cool thing for me is
absolutely
with the age we live in, I have video footage of it.
Yeah.
I can have pictures of it. I have and I can even go back and look at the service, dig it up off YouTube and find it, which is really weird because I hate looking at myself and I'm like, oh my gosh.
We don't like videos of we just had that conversation. We don't like videos of ourselves.
No, we don't. So. And it's so funny just to look because I can vividly remember because it was on Easter Sunday, so I think we were all packed in there when I got saved. So it was like, I think it was 10:30 service probably. And so everybody's just staring at me. I'm like,
a lot of people.
Who are you? And I mean, a lot of them, of course, years down the road, I'd interview them, and it's just wild to go back and look at that and then go, man, God's been working since, those 2.5, I guess, almost years now.
Absolutely. But he works, and it's a great thing to remember. I think about my baptism. I think about when I first, professed my faith and came to the Lord, and it is a special time. It's probably one of the biggest moments of my life. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. Yeah. So, how did you come to Northside? How did you and your family land on Northside of all churches?
Yeah. So my grandfather-in-law, my wife's grandfather, his name is Wallace Green. People listening to podcasts will probably know who I'm talking about. They were at Northside for, I don't know the exact time. I'd have to say 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
They were longtime members of Northside. They did take a brief hiatus, and then, they came back. Robbie was here. And so I was coming to Northside even before I was saved. This is the point I'm getting to. So Allison and I were married. I was coming to Northside with her, obviously not regularly. We'd come on some Sundays with her family and stuff. And, I always thought Robbie was Pastor Robbie, I should say that. I always thought Pastor Robbie was an amazing, even before I was saved, I would listen and I'd feel a little bit of conviction there. And, but nothing really kind of stuck. I never kind of got grabbed, and then went through some stuff in life, got saved. And then Alice and I started coming more regularly. And, I had became a member at that point. And, we were still coming pretty regularly. COVID happened, obviously, which we stopped coming for a little bit. And then Allison's grandfather passed away. God, forgive me, Allison. I believe it was last year. And no, it wasn't last year. I'm sorry. It was the year before last. And we made this decision a few months. I saw how he was connected in the church and how everyone knew him, and he had this church family. I told my wife, I said, I want that. I want that for us. And so we were already members, but that's when we really dove in. And it was Wednesday nights, Sunday nights, life groups. And in just the change that we've seen in our friends and, just our church family and everything since then. It's been awesome. I love Northside. I love Northside.
I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that I'm here.
Yeah.
But, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but one thing that's popped in my head was how was that for your wife with because, you weren't coming regularly, right? And she's already saved, right?
Yes. And
so how was that for her when she's obviously wanting you to come?
Yes, she wanted me to come. And I'll answer. That's fine. I don't want to speak too much for her. I think that she probably, when we got married and stuff, I believe she probably had held out hope that, and we had talked about it before. That's the funny thing is before marriage, we talked about it. I was like, oh yeah, I want my kids to grow up in church, and I want them, like I said, for me back then, it was all a morality thing. I want them to have good values and stuff. And I didn't really understand about Jesus and being saved. So I think she probably had that in her mind, and she held out hope that's what it would be. And then, honestly, it was, when I got saved, then she actually she started getting discipled as well. Now she had been saved younger, but she started being discipled and stuff as well. That's good. So, it was just great.
What's part of, and maybe this just has the effect, part of, the husband being the leader, right?
Yes.
Maybe and that has that effect. Of, it kind of popped in my brain when you said that, maybe that's what a part of that is.
I agree.
For sure. So what got you interested into the choir? And, that's kind of how we met. Kind of started talking more.
It is.
So,
it is.
Yep.
So it's funny, by the way, I don't think I'm a good singer.
Oh, come on. You're great.
I used to always even when even this is once again, before we even got saved, loved the music.
Yeah.
Always thought the music was great. Then after I got saved, the music meant even more.
Yep.
And I would make comments to Allison, all the time, ooh, I should go join the choir and stuff, and make jokes. And I would love to be up there. But to be honest, I was scared. I was like, okay, I didn't think I was a great singer.
Yeah.
Two, I didn't know if it was I had to try out for the choir or what was involved. Yeah. And then it was the all men's sing. It was last year when we did the all men's choir, and I was like, I'm going.
Yep.
And I walked up there, and I'll give Doug Cobb a shout out because right after we finished singing, Doug was like, you should join the choir. And then even afterwards, he found me after the service. He said, I'm going to see you Wednesday, right? And then I came on Wednesday.
Go Doug.
Doug Cobb.
I tell you, he cracks me up.
Yeah.
I'll be here, we're just practicing or whatever, and I hear him in the back just making some kind of joke. I'm like, what in the, but he's great.
I love Doug. I love Doug. he saw the chance and he took it. He got me in there, which I'm glad he did because I love the choir.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've heard, Mark's story about joining the choir, but he told me it on here, and he said there was one time where I think they had brought donuts for the choir or something.
Right.
And he had heard about it, and he tried to come up to get him a donut and sneak out. And then they were like, "Oh, I guess you're singing now." Like whoever it was like, "Oh, you're singing, by the way."
Yeah.
And so then he just got stuck, and then
there he is.
And then, all because of one donut. Now Mark's in the choir.
Well, that's
on a regular basis.
I think that is great when people see younger men, younger guys and girls in the choir. I mean, we want more people to come up there with us and worship.
Right.
And
especially guys, come on,
especially
get up there.
We need the guys up there, man. I think that Jeff always seemed so excited when I joined the choir. I was like, he can't think I'm that good of a singer. Then I realized, it's always good when like a younger crowd is starting to join, because it'll encourage others to do the same.
Me and my mom, we joke around all the time. We're like, we're blenders, all right? It like sometimes, and we joke around. We're like, sometimes it takes a few awful notes to make something beautiful out of it, and
That's
God
true.
does that, all right?
That's true.
And I've laughed a few times just because I think sometimes it's harder online. I've listened to it, and some of the and I won't say who it was because they would be like, "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" Because you're not up there with a microphone. But sometimes they boost the microphones online, and I'm like, "Ooh, somebody hit a sour note there." But it's all right. You're singing. You're singing praises to God. That's all that matters.
Listen, I've caught myself on the replay singing on the choir mic.
Yeah,
I've heard myself on the online.
You've heard yourself on the choir mic.
I shook my head. I was just like, "Oh my gosh."
Well, I'm glad I'm short enough where you can't hear me.
But
like I'll
sometimes
be
it's right in front of my face.
Or even if it's like. Or I'm like right under it.
Yeah.
It doesn't pick me up, which I'm like, and I'm loud too. And especially like on Sunday, like Wednesday nights.
Yes.
Jamie Gibbons will be standing right next to me, and then I try to match his level, which I kill my voice trying to do that because he's so loud.
He sings loud and high.
He's
loud and high.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
And if he gets a chance to listen to this, I just came back from his house after a D now, and we talked about that. How he sings proudly, even if it's off a little bit of a key, he sings that joyful noise.
Listen, he's up there worshiping. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm. And so, and also too, how's your relationships changed? Since you've been in the choir, that's changed a lot, and you've known a lot more people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that was the first thing I really, after we started coming regularly, I joined the choir. That was kind of when I first started to break into those new relationships. Like the choir guys were so welcoming.
Yeah.
Like Doug and Devon and Ben McQuaig, Phil Deal. I love those guys. They were so welcoming for me. And so I started to form relationships with those guys. And it just opened up doors.
Yeah.
It just kind of opened up doors because it wasn't long after that that Pastor Robbie asked me and Allison if we'd be interested in assisting to teach a life group.
Yeah. That's what I
so,
thought you taught.
We paired up with Corey Welch teaching the
cool.
1030 Young Families group. And then, now he's the kids pastor.
Yeah.
And so I've taken over the group. And if you would have told me that I would have been doing that 2, 3, even after I was saved 2, 3 years ago, I'd be like, there's no way they'd ask me to do that. But I'm so glad they did because it helped me grow.
Well, I'll tell you, God works quick.
He works fast.
I've only been to 3D nows, and the one of them I just went to, I taught. And so I was like,
good for you.
What am I? I was scared to death. I mean, you're leading, you're leading young generation, even if you just came out of it yourself.
Correct.
And, you don't want to steer them wrong in any kind of way. Sure, I had Mikey there to help me, but you want to give them, godly wisdom and what you can do, whether if it's D now or just teaching in a life group. And you don't want to say something that's just off the walls.
Yeah.
But
I'm always afraid of saying off the wall stuff.
Right?
Yeah, I'm always afraid. I'm like, I don't want to mess something up or somebody correct me on scripture. But I mean, ultimately, the Holy Spirit's the teacher, right?
That's right. That's right. And hey, God will get you through that and give you the right words to say.
Absolutely.
Regardless of whatever it is. But for people that don't know, what is Church Street? And I've not been yet, but I will be probably after this.
I'm going to hold you to that.
You better.
So Church Street Cafe is a small restaurant. The restaurant as some form or fashion has probably been there for 30, 40 years. I know my dad, who was born in Hahira, who is now, I believe, 62 or 63, was going to that restaurant to eat when he was like 17.
Wow.
Now, it was a different restaurant back then, but it's been Church Street Cafe for, I think, about 10 years. And I partnered up with the owner about, I guess, probably coming up on 3 years now. And, one thing when I did it, I kind of took a leap of faith to do that because I was comfortable in the job I had, but I took a leap and I went there and as of last June, I had the opportunity to buy it outright. So And has it been stressful? Yeah, but it's
Sure.
been. I love that restaurant. I really do. I love what I do, and it means a lot to me. Just doing that. Just I don't know that community and everything. Even though I live in Valdosta, the Hahira community and everything. It's I don't know.
That's a
It's
new group of
special.
people that you can reach out to.
Absolutely.
Because sure, people know you here, but it's great that like it's kind of funny because I feel like between you and Hahira and then also the Good Book here in Valdosta,
Yeah.
And that'd be awesome if you guys ever could do something together. But I'm just pitching the idea, guys.
I would love to.
But it's kind of like you're getting you're saving souls right there.
Absolutely.
Between all of Georgia right there in the southern half. Now we just need some other places to pop up, and we'll be good to go.
Don't forget about Raising Cane.
That's
Eric
right.
And Jessica Valesta.
That's right. Yeah. Love them too.
They got Lake Park covered for us.
They do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're like halfway in between like my drive from Northside because I live in Lake Park down there. And,
Oh, good.
And and I don't know why. I really don't. But like, if anything good came out of this whole hurricane situation, is when we really realized how much Eric and Jessica do.
They're awesome.
I mean, we knew they did a lot, but then it really took, because we really got to see it, during the hurricane.
Absolutely.
And then, and also just the hot meals they're providing. That they serve. Even if you're paying for it, it's a good meal. To sit down and enjoy with people.
Yeah. Eric and Jessica, bless her, are special people.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And I remember I was walking around the store one time, turning my head, and I'm like, that's Eric's face on a seasoning.
Listen, I'm not trying to do any advertisement here, but those Eric seasonings are pretty good.
I bet you
they're very good.
And those casseroles in there, they got in there that you can make are really good.
Good.
We had them. I think one of them we had like the chicken bacon ranch one we had. That was that choir banquet a couple years ago. I went and got literally that was what I got for my birthday. I go like, Mom, you don't have to get me a cake. Get me that. Get me that.
That's good. They're getting some free advertisement right here. They are awesome though.
They are. They really are.
They're great.
Yeah. And for long time listeners, they've been on before. Over and their episode did like wonders. It was wild.
Yeah.
It's one of those that broke the 100 mark.
Nice.
But yeah, free advertisement for the Good Book for you guys and for Raising Cane as well.
Come on, I'm not complaining.
All three great places. And you better hold me to go on to Church Street because I want to so bad.
I will. I'm going to text you tomorrow and see when you're coming.
you got it. But I'll say this. I'll be coming before this episode comes out.
Perfect.
I'm going to do that.
Perfect.
But what are some examples that God's used Church Street that you can think of?
Well, and that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still figuring it out. I'll say one thing. This may answer part of that, but possibly not. The Northside family has been so supportive. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't even name all the people, but so many people just become regulars and they support me. And, from the choir people to just friends I've made in the church, they come up there and eat. Hey, Corey, before Corey became a kids pastor, he'd go there and eat 2 or 3 times a week sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. Corey Welch would be up there all the time.
That's awesome.
But that's one thing I do want to say is the church family here has been so supportive of Allison and I after we bought that. But I'm still kind of figuring it out. I know that there's ways that the Lord's working with the staff in the way that it opened up new opportunities for me to hire people. For instance, I've hired some people from the church, and then when they come in, the other staff members kind of see that, they see that these are like-minded individuals in that aspect. Mm-hmm. We do our ribeye steak nights the last Friday of every month. And, when Allison decided she was going to go to Cuba, we were trying to fundraise, and I was like, the restaurant's a great place to do that. So now I get to do these fundraisers for mission trips. And now we've funded most of Allison's. Mine from Brazil has been funded for that. I've actually funded some other people going to Brazil through the restaurant. Good. So I think that's a really good way too. And then that's just exposure. People know now. They know that Church Street Cafe is somewhere that is going to be involved in those kind of things. Mm-hmm. We have several people from Northside and then even outside Northside, small discipleship groups go up there and meet for breakfast.
That's good. That's
so
really good.
Yeah, and I love that. I welcome that. I want that. I want people to know that that's a safe place and a place where you can go where, the owner and the staff they're like-minded, know? So,
there's plenty of places that wouldn't at all.
Well, there's tons of places and, it can come from as much as atmosphere to the staff members being encouraging, and there's a lot of things that go into that.
Right.
But yeah, I love that. And so I'd say that I figured out some ways, and it's still a process.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping there's more. I'm hoping
Well,
there's more.
You never know, just to like, to make somebody's day, just to say if their outfits looks good, just to be encouraging to them and kind to them.
Absolutely.
What difference that can make,
Yeah.
and just somebody's life, and then you might do that, and then you might say, hey, like if you're looking for a church home, if you get that spiritual conversation, come to Northside, and then you never know where that may lead. Right.
I have invited people to Northside before.
See, there you go. There it is.
Absolutely.
Yep. So now we're going to go into, well, before I ask that, actually, what's your favorite thing off the menu?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mhm.
Listen, I don't think you can go wrong with our burger.
Yeah.
I think our burgers probably is the most sold item. It is.
I've heard that.
I eat them all the time. They're so good. We also have some specialty burgers we do on specials. But
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you're going to go to Church Street for the first time, I would try either the burger or the buffalo fried chicken wrap.
Gotcha. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those options.
Gotcha.
And then just keep coming and expanding on that, and eventually you can eat everything.
Just grab the menu and then just check things off. And
just start checking things off. But I would definitely point you in that direction.
Yeah.
But my favorite would have to be the burger.
I was joking around with my mom like the other day. I said, yeah, they should, if they were gonna name something after like the podcast or the podcast pub burger, do it. I'm just saying. I'd laugh my head off.
I'll do it. We got to come up with what we want on there.
Yeah, we would.
Let's think about what we want on there.
That would be like hilarious. I'm just being real.
Yeah.
Even if I was the only person that would know that's what that's for, wouldn't care. That'd be so funny.
I'm going to come up with it now,
Please.
just for you.
Come on, please. So we're going to go into questions about young people and things like that.
Let's do it.
So when you look at the youth today, are you worried, or do you see hope, or are you worried about the future?
I tell you what. I guess we're recording this at the perfect time because this was D-Now weekend, and going in there Sunday morning and seeing, I don't know how many kids were up there.
Well, probably at least 130
There
something.
had
And
to
then
have
you had
been
leaders.
130, yeah.
There was close to 200 people up on that platform, and I was smack dab straight in the middle. I don't know why, but
listen, that was unbelievable to see, and I think it really, not just that. I think it was maybe last year's D-Now or it was the college thing. I'm not sure, but I never forget when they were up there singing, and all those young people were like, they weren't just singing, like they were full on worshiping, like jumping up and down, praising. And I remember, I looked at Allison and I was just like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think about my children, which I have an 8-year-old and about to be 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is amazing. They're going to grow up in an environment where, it's not just like, oh, we're going to go to church and learn about. These are young people who are actually they're like fiery about it. Mm-hmm. They're on fire for the word. They're on fire for the Lord, and I think that's spectacular, because I really think that in every generation probably could say this about the generation that came after them, but the things that your generation has to deal with is completely different than what I dealt with when I was y'all's age. Mm-hmm. We didn't have smartphones and social media and all of the worldly ways constantly pushed on you.
Yep.
It's always right in your face. And I think that's tough. That could be tough for adults. Mm-hmm. And so when I see what I saw on Sunday, I have so much hope. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing. And it gets me fired up. Yeah. It gets me fired up.
I'd agree. And also too, you get to think too, those will be the kids now will be the ones that we probably will be the ones that can teach your kids in the future.
Absolutely.
It'll continue along.
How good do you think that makes somebody like me feel when it's like I see kids who aren't just going through the motions?
Yep.
It's not just kids going through the motions, like full on worship.
Yeah.
An amazing thing.
Yeah. Like I'll tell you one of the things that the speaker said, because, as a leader, you get just as much out of it, if not more, than the students do.
Yeah.
With me being fresh out of the student wing and then into the college ministry, he said that, and he was straight up about it. He said, this generation, we got to grow up though. Like, you got to grow up. And what he meant by that was about sharing God's word, where we get, this is for anybody really. You might get scared, whatever, or what people might think about it, but grow up and do it, because you don't know, what if that's the only time you see that person and God's telling you to go do it, and then you didn't do it. And then, of course you've seen videos about it, because we don't exactly know how it's going to go. Like, what if, God she shows you, well, see that one person right there you didn't know?
Yeah.
And now he's not going to be here. And he or she's not going to be here because you didn't say something about it.
One of the things that it's a terrifying thought. Yeah. One of the things in life group I brought up one time, it's like, if we knew Jesus was coming back tomorrow, how would we act? And like, there's probably a long list of people that you'd be like, these people need to be saved, and you'd know that. But why don't we live with that kind of mentality all the time?
Right.
And to your point, another thing that makes me just I've done BCM outreach a couple of times.
Yeah.
I've gone to the BCM and done outreach, I think 3 or 4 times. And that first time I went, and it was me and Mikey.
Yeah,
I was walking around with Mikey,
Yep.
and I watched Mikey walk around to these college students and just confidently walk up to them and start asking them about the gospel and start telling them about the gospel. And I was blown away.
Mikey's great, bro.
Mikey's great, but
He's
there's
great.
other ones that are great at the BCM too. I've done it with other guys.
Yeah.
And
They're all
that to me, I'm watching. Listen, if you would have seen Brett Thomas at age 20, 21, like I could not have fathomed doing that back then.
Yeah.
And obviously I didn't know the Lord, but still, like, I could not
Just
have
going up
fathomed
and someone
that.
to speaking. To
Yes,
somebody like that.
and these kids are going out there doing it with the gospel, and it's just, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing is what it is.
It really is. I don't know if you've seen what's his name? Bryce Crawford at all. He's a younger guy, but he kind of does some like street evangelism a little bit, and he goes into these places that.
Is he the one just joined the choir?
No, he's not from around here. He's
Okay, I'm sorry. I know the Bryce who just joined the choir. Okay, go ahead.
But he's like somebody that is like kind of like an influencer or whatever.
Sure.
But he really he goes into these places that, I mean, it'd be even rough for even some of the hardcore Christians to touch.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been to some just to name a few like furry conventions and stuff like that. Or like
Oh, wow, yeah.
drag shows, things like just to share the gospel with them. But what's the cool thing about those videos are? They're sitting down and listening to them.
Yeah. I guarantee you people are getting saved.
They do. And it's, I mean, you got to commend them a little bit for having that courage, but also God's given it to them too. I mean,
He does.
And and then of course you sit there and go, well, I could do that. It'd be something you could do in the future. And you go, God, you have to give me a lot of strength for that and the knowledge, because one thing I've learned about, especially with the generation that's not saved, people in my generation, they're not going to throw the easy questions at you. They're not.
No.
They're going to throw the hard stuff at you that I'm like, I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
I'll come back and tell you. And you might have to do that.
Yeah.
Because they are not going to throw the easy stuff at you at all. Because they've heard this and that from social media, whatever.
Sure.
And it's a cesspool of misinformation.
Oh, it's always a cesspool of information. And I think to your point, it's just the more you do it, the more confident you become.
Yeah.
Because then somebody has asked you that question and you're going to go figure out how to answer that question. So the next time it comes up,
That's right.
You'll be more prepared. But I think as far as the youth goes, I mean, what I see here at Northside of the BCM and the David Williams is doing over there, it's just, it blows my mind. So I would have to say I'm very, very hopeful and optimistic.
Yeah.
So.
And, if Will's listening to this,
Will McKee.
great, yes, love your ministry, love being in it. And also thank you for stepping up for D-Now this weekend, with Noah being sick. I know this will come out probably a little while from D-Now, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, you stepped up, dude,
Will
not just for
McKee,
Will
McKee's one of a kind.
He is. I mean,
He's one of a kind.
He stepped up not just for a friend, but he stepped up for this youth group.
Yep.
To keep them going
Yeah.
and keep them fired up. Because we could have been like, well, dang, we don't have a youth pastor like that. That sucks. But no, he kept us revved up and going.
Yeah.
But,
He's great. I hate that for Noah.
I know. I mean, that takes a special kind of person to step in
does.
like that. And, he knows how to get people hyped, though. I'll tell you that, especially during that Strive conference.
Yeah.
He was getting us hyped.
Oh, man, absolutely. Before, I don't know if you're about to move on. Before we move on, I do want to say something, too, that when I see somebody like Noah Blunt, I'm so impressed. Once again, I see somebody Noah and I look at myself when I was that age, and it's like, I mean, that's insane. This guy is standing in front of a huge church and giving sermons, and they're so good and it's done so well. And I'm like, once again, I couldn't picture myself up there now doing that, much less when I was, I'm assuming he's 22, maybe 23?
He's 23 now.
23. Yep. So props to you, Noah.
He's doing that while also doing some media things on the side as well for Northside and on. I'm like, dude, how do you keep up with all that? And
Good for him.
one thing that's so funny, I walk into his office, he's got sticky notes all over his desk.
Hey.
And he just, as he does stuff, chunks them. Just like,
Organization is key.
You got to do what you got to do, man. But what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to navigate this world in a biblical way?
That's a good question. As someone who lived in the world in a non-biblical way for longer in my life than I have in a biblical way, I can say that being in the Word and staying fresh in the Word is key.
Yeah,
it's paramount for that, and being active in a church, because that was one. Like, I was an adult and then I got saved, and so I could literally apply Scripture to things that just a few years prior were me. And I think that was that was one of the ways that I was able to like just stay on the path and keep my walk. And it's staying in the Word is always the best thing, because if once you know the biblical way, then you can adhere to the biblical way and avoid the worldly way, because
That's good.
the worldly way wants to tell, hey, do what you want to do, be who you want to be, and that's just not the biblical way.
Yep, that's right. And you brought up like, saying that you've been like, well, I don't know how to put this into words. Like you've longer that you've not been saved than when you've been saved. I'm excited to cross that threshold when I've been longer saved than I haven't. Like, I don't know. I feel like it should be like a awesome milestone when I hit it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it's gonna be like,
I'm very excited for that.
Yeah. Like I'm counting down the years, like ready for it.
Absolutely.
But why do you think young people run away when they hear the name Jesus? Like in a conversation, for example, like if you're going through the BCM and talking.
Well, that's definitely somewhere where I've seen it happen there. I think that I think it makes some people uncomfortable. And sometimes it may not even be, I think sometimes in those situations, just being confronted somebody who's going to start asking questions could be uncomfortable. But I think that's the way of the world, and that's the enemy, and it makes people uncomfortable when they hear the name Jesus and people start talking about it.
Yeah.
Because we know the enemy has authority here on earth, and he doesn't like that.
No.
I think that's probably the number one reason. And you brought up a good point that there's so much misinformation, and then you have this rabbit hole. Here we go. On social media, I've brought this up in my life group. Is like every now and then I scroll on Instagram and Facebook.
We all do it.
We all do it. I scroll, and I used to come across the stuff, and it'd be a post where somebody's like thanking God for something, and I would always look at the comment section, and you just see people going to war in the comment section where, on both sides of the battle. And that's what like people are dealing with these days, like the youth especially is dealing with, people constantly having an opinion on everything, and they're spreading misinformation. And because when you hear the truth, like when you hear the actual truth of Jesus in the Bible, I think that it's going to grab you.
Yep.
It's going to grab you, but there's so much other stuff they've heard. And there could be a multitude of reasons too, to go along with that. But I really believe, man, social media has just done a number. It's done a number on us, man. It's when you have all the information in the world right at your fingertips, and then not even the right information. I mean, it's just, you want to talk about a rabbit hole? That's one right there.
You're not kidding. And like one of the things, I had somebody, youth, he asked me, if he should get social media. I'm like, well, first ask your parents, but second, if it was me, no, unless you're trying to promote something. Like if you're trying to promote, say, like your restaurant or like a podcast, for example, that's a great way to get things out.
It's a great way to reach people.
Right. But if you have no other way, if you're a young person and you don't do anything kind of like that, no.
Yeah.
Stay off it. And I mean, I get it, you want to connect with your friends and all that, but that's what normal phone calls are for.
But is that what we're really doing on social media, is connecting with friends? And we know there's algorithms, and it's made to just keep your attention span incredibly short. Yep. Like that's what it's all come down to, is a short attention span.
I don't know where I heard this from, but a lot of humans now, because of social media, we have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. You know that expression, your attention span is like a gold. No. Yeah. It's longer for them now, because we're so like, just want to move on to the next thing on social media and scroll through it.
Yeah. Well, apply that to your question about why do people sometimes run when they hear the name Jesus? They don't have the attention span where they want to sit there and actually discuss it.
Yeah.
And in life, a lot of us are impatient. I talked about this in life group again, that, are we think about when you're like waiting in a line or something. Sorry, I'm going off topic here. You're always thinking about like, oh, what else could I be doing? Or traffic's long. You're like, what else can I be doing? There's so much else I could be doing. And we're always go, And so I think that's another reason why sometimes people run. They're like, I don't want to take the time to do this. I have so many better things that I could be doing. And that's just the unfortunate, like I said, that's the way of the world.
Man, sometimes I can't shut my brain off, which like,
it's tough.
I mean, so like, sometimes I can't, when I'm trying to go to bed, I'll be sitting there for a good solid 20 minutes, just in trying to go to bed, go to sleep. My brain's just thinking constantly, did I do that? Or do I need to do that? Whatever, And I don't know if it's because of like running a ministry deal or whatever, or just for anybody, probably for anybody, but it's like, oh my gosh, God, let me go to sleep. Stop giving me ideas over here.
Absolutely.
Even if they're good or bad. You know? I mean, because not every idea we're going to have for whatever we're doing is going to work.
No.
But so in your opinion, how should students share the gospel without coming across as prideful. Because you can just share it and be like, well, Jesus did this in my life, and he doesn't do it. He hadn't done it in yours yet, or whatever. And
that's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
That actually is a really good question. So maybe I'll go down the right path here. I think about when I was at the BCM a few times. Like I said, walking up to people and delivering the gospel is very difficult. It's very difficult. Yeah. It's very nerve-wracking. It's very uncomfortable. And so a lot of these times when I went, I'll be honest, I wasn't comfortable doing it. I felt it was better. Like the college students can go and do it, and I'm there for like support, maybe to answer some questions or come in.
Yeah.
But the way that I felt and the way that I still feel today, my best way of like when I start sharing the gospel with somebody is to be relatable. Relatable to their situations. Like if somebody brings up something, this happened a few times on a BCM where somebody would bring something up and I would think, oh, I've been through that.
Bingo. Yep.
And it's not like, oh, I've been there too. And if you can truly relate to somebody and show empathy, I think that's a really good way to come across to people where they're not just going to feel like, I don't think it's about shoving Jesus down people's throat. Like you want to have a real conversation and deliver that message to them, and you want it to stick.
Right.
And so, maybe that answers it a little bit, but, I think pride, man, I tell you what, you never want to come across as prideful.
No.
You never want to come across as prideful because, I don't think we should have that pride in our hearts anyway, but, that's for me personally, that's how I've learned is my best way of coming across in a non-prideful way is being relatable.
Mm-hmm.
If you've gone through something similar to somebody, they're bringing something up to you, you try to be relatable, you come to their level. And I think that's a good way to come through.
Yeah.
So
100%. Like, because people, especially now with like young people, they want you to be real. Don't fake it.
No.
Don't put like some sort of show on it and just like, just be real about it. I had a friend of mine, I've used this example a few times, but he asked me, he was going to go speak to a youth group. And I said, and he asked me any advice. And I said, just be real. I know he was going to, but just, and to keep it in the back of your head, like, they can tell you're trying to fake it. I mean, we're on social media enough to realize when people are trying to put on a show for views and 100%. Things like that. We can see when you're not being genuine.
Yep.
Even some of the Christian videos when they're like, I don't know about you, but I hate the ones that go like, talk about like and subscribe or whatever, and then what I'm like, no, don't be doing that. Just give if you truly care. If you
truly care, just deliver it.
Just deliver it and be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's the key is just being real.
Yeah.
And especially to make people realize that Christians go through some of the same exact things as they did or have.
Absolutely.
Or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, listen, like I said in the beginning, talking about my testimony before I was saved, apart from Christ, we're capable of terrible things. And so I think that maybe this is another addition to the answer to that question is when we're delivering the gospel, it should never be in a manner where we're like, I'm better than you because I'm Christian. No. I know Jesus. Like you're never going to convince anybody like that. And luckily, I don't see a lot of people doing that, but I know it exists.
Yeah.
And I have known people in my life who would turn their nose up at others for things they did. Think about the guy you just brought up, Bryce Crawford. Yeah. I mean, think of the places he's going. Mm-hmm. Think about how watch his delivery. If he can't be prideful in that situation because then they're going to be like, oh, you think you're better than us. Yeah. And
that's the key. He's really empathetic.
Empathy, man. Listen, even in the restaurant world, you got to upset customer. I'm telling you, empathy is how you break down walls.
Yeah.
That's how you break down barriers for people is being empathetic. I'm telling you.
Yeah, because even in a place called Church Street, you're going to have somebody that comes up and not be happy about something.
Absolutely. It happens. It's happened. My entire career it's happened. And the one thing I've learned is the minute you're empathetic with somebody who is upset about something, you watch the wall get broken down. Mm-hmm. They're thinking oh, this person's not telling me that it was right. They're saying oh, hey, if I was in your shoes or I've been in your shoes and I know it hurts, where I was upset too, empathy does wonders.
I mean, because, especially in, like with Church Street, for example, somebody gets upset about an order or something like that, but we don't know if something previous happened, that, in the day or whatever.
Absolutely.
And that's just kind of the last thing they wanted to have happen.
Sometimes it's the last straw.
Yeah.
And you have to approach them like that. Okay, what has this person been through?
Yeah.
Would I be upset if I was in their shoes?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's,
And that's a good way to look at it. Because, some people, they just go straight to arguing. And that's not going to get you anywhere.
To be empathetic, you got to put your pride aside. I can tell you that right now.
That's right.
So.
That's right. So I love to ask this question because it gets people's head spinning or
Here we
just
go.
like thinking.
I'm ready to
If you could
spin.
describe NBC in one word, what would it be and why?
Oh, Northside. Describe Northside in one word. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this one's
It's almost like you don't want to say the wrong thing. I would say family.
That's good.
Because I think it's hard for people, and I don't have a lot of I don't have any other experience. I went to a church. I went to First United Methodist Church downtown when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't really tell you much about it. I don't remember much, but I think it's hard for people if they come into a big church to feel included. Like, I think it's intimidating. You can feel like you're not included. Like, how do I break in or break that barrier? And man, Northside, like, it is a family here.
It is.
And it's like every time I meet somebody, it's like every time they see me from that, or I see them from that point, it's like, them.
Yeah.
And people were so welcoming. Like I said, from the choir, the minute I joined the choir, that was intimidating. Those guys were like family to me. I love those guys. When we joined our life group, when I started teaching, you think I was just like, oh, this is great, this is it. No, I was terrified.
Right.
Listen, my shirt was probably drenched in sweat that first time I taught that class. But now, like, that is family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, those in just all these families we become friends with outside of church, it's a family here. Yeah. It's a family here, and I feel like everyone's welcome, and people here really make an effort to make others feel welcome because we want them here. Yeah,
that's good. And like we bring up the choir, for example, they made me feel welcome, especially because I'm not the youngest guy up there at the time.
You are.
I'm like I felt really kind of awkward because like there's nobody else of my age up there, but it don't matter now. I don't care. Yeah. Like you guys are like really, really fun and funny
They're fun, they're funny, and they like to worship up there, which gets me out of my comfort zone because I'm traditionally your guy who will just stand straight and sing, and like those guys will be like cheering and raising their hands, and I'm like, it makes you want to do it,
especially if you're next to Craig or Devon. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They are hilarious, man.
You get next to Craig or Devon, they'll get you into it. And then there's other guys who just, they get me so fired up there. I love it.
Yeah. So I don't know how this happened. This was like a one-off thing because usually like Craig and Devon, they're by each other, like kind of in the back there on the final row. Yeah. Somehow they ended up on the front with me, and I'm like, so one's on one side, one's on the other, and I'm in between them. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is wild just to hear them both in my ear.
It's a great place to be.
It was. It really was. Really.
It's a great place to be.
It was so funny, but I absolutely love them. I love the choir. Like you can tell that it comes from a genuine place. Like every part of the choir.
All those guys, man. Those guys, it's awesome. This is, I talked about the fiery youth, how those youth are fiery for the Lord, but like you see these men in the choir who've been saved for, some probably, I don't know all of their testimonies. I would assume some have been saved a long time, but they're still up there. They're fiery, man. They're worshiping. They're fiery for the Lord. And I tell you what, this church is a family.
Yeah. And hey, shameless plug, but you can find some of those testimonies right here on the podcast. So there's plenty of
shameless plug. I'll have to go back and listen to some of their testimonies so I can talk about
Mike
it with
Sellers, for example.
Oh, Mike Sellers. He's hilarious.
His was really good. I got a lot of like Doug, for example. You mentioned him earlier. Yeah. I don't have him recorded yet, but he's on the list.
We're going to get him on here.
Yeah. Hey, like he's got a shirt. So like it kind of like if you got a shirt, you got any merchandise and you haven't been on the podcast yet, kind of an indication. You'd be all right being on it, and
listen, I'm gonna have to say something to Doug because hey, pull me in the choir. I'm gonna go and I'm like, how did I get on? Why have I done a podcast before you? You need to get on there. That's what I'm gonna say.
And I think it was the funniest thing, just because I'm excited for his, just because there's no telling what he's gonna say. And because Doug is Doug, and he's gonna be Doug.
He's Doug,
and that's
everybody knows Doug Cobb.
That's right. Everybody knows Doug, and me and Gabby Stamper were talking about it. She's like, yeah, him and like a couple other ones, but they obviously she loves it. But they're like, yeah, they pick on me when I get up there because I was like, oh, you're always late. I'm like, that's us. All right, we're gonna pick on you a little bit.
Listen, I sat in the pews for the first time. A couple of maybe it was the choir kickoff.
Oh boy!
Like I was dealing with some voice stuff. My throat was a little sore. I actually sat in the choir, which. One, I hate that I missed it. They were singing amazing songs, but that's the first time I've experienced the choir since I joined from the pews again, and they were so good that night. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. But Man, they gave me such a hard time.
They
Gave me such a hard time.
I bet
They were staring at me, like pointing at me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Well, they give Noah Jenkins a hard time about that.
They do.
Well, they're like, "Get up here,
Yeah.
come on," you know.
But most of the time it works because if they tell me to get up there, I'm like, "I'm gonna go."
It does.
Here I go.
I mean, and some of those songs, like especially for the Bible conference, I'm so excited for them.
yes,
Like, oh my gosh, like
it's gonna be huge.
so good. But you know, one thing I did want to ask before we wrap up is, what are your life verses and why are they important to you, or verses? You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Life verses from Scripture. So I'm gonna go to one, and this one has always stayed with me. I read it shortly into my. I was being discipled. The guy who discipled me took me through a pattern, and we got into the book of James. And man, listen, you don't hate me for this. Now I'm going blank, but I believe it's James. Chapter 1, verse 2.
Hey, if you got to pull your phone out, do
I
it.
might have to pull my phone out because I don't want to get the actual verse in Scripture wrong.
No, I understand that, man.
But I know the Scripture, but it's...
I've had people pull out an index card with it on their pocket.
I just want to make sure. I can't remember it's chapter 1, verse 2, or chapter... it is chapter 1, verse 2. It is, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." It goes on to say, "Let perseverance finish its work so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." And that scripture, particularly the first two verses there, have been instrumental to me in my faith, because I was in a very difficult time when I got saved, and I still was continuing to deal some stuff even after I got saved and I was going through discipleship. And when I read that, it was like a door was opened, and I understood at that point that, you know what, like these trials, they may be the hardest thing I'm going through in my life, but when you change your perspective and you think, okay, like I know that this is, I'm being tested, you know, this is for me to build my faith and perseverance. And that's what God ultimately wants for all of us. You know, the trials and tribulations are there for us to grow in our faith. And it doesn't always seem like that when we're in it, but I always relate back to that scripture when I'm going through something tough, and it's gotten me through some stuff, man. I tell you what,
that's really good.
That's definitely my life verse right there.
That's good. Well, that's all the questions I have, but just to let people know, please go over to Church Street. If you're in the area, do it.
Come on.
You know,
hey, Hahira, come see me.
And you might see me there trying to test it out for the first time.
That's fine.
You know, and also I just want to let people know, if you know, you're not subscribed to the YouTube yet, please do it. It helps me out a ton. And if you want to find the podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, and also there's a new website too. So if you want merchandise, please, I'd be more than happy to send it your way. You just got to give me a little bit of money first. So, but you know, all that goes back to help me and help the ministry as well. So. But man, I thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I
can't wait to see what God does with it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. With another episode of the Young Minds Podcast coming to a close, I just want to remind you that you are never alone and faith is action. So let's get out there.